Well, again, welcome. A joy to be with everyone in Pune. And also, just before we begin, just congratulations to Ananda Pune for a new center coming up and a large space to be able to do a lot and to serve a lot of people. I'm excited, looking forward to visiting there and seeing what you have happening. And I understand it's still being worked on. But as you get ready to go there, I thought I would talk tonight just about how to give to others and how to serve others. You know, so much of what Ananda does is giving, serving, reaching out to people, sharing teachings, especially sharing kindness, joy, divine inspiration. And how we do it is actually really, really crucial. And Swamiji talked a lot about this over the years. So, reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, stanza 9, actions performed for selfish gain are karmically binding. Therefore, O son of Kunti, that is to say, of dispassion, perform your duty without attachment in a spirit of religious self-offering. And that idea of serving in a spirit of religious self-offering is really helpful when we're practicing Ananda Seva and the right way to give. And when we give in the right way, it generates a flow of energy and divine grace that's flowing through us and that uplifts us. When we give with a sense of either any sort of resistance or with the thought of I, that I'm giving, or I'm giving because there may be some return from this person, then that cuts off the flow of energy and grace. And that's not the spirit of attachment and the spirit of religious self-offering that Krishna is talking about. And so Swamiji talked a lot about cooperating with grace, said many times, and service in the right way is this cooperating with grace. Now, one of the keys is to have something to give to people. And when we are just working with willpower, energy, gritting our teeth and say, okay, these people are coming and I gotta give and I gotta do something and I'll do it even if it kills me. And if we just do it with willpower and with any sense of resistance, then we cut off that flow of energy and grace. And so it's important to at least try to have some degree of inspiration and love for God and devotion and having that spirit of religious self-offering in meditation. And when we can practice Kriya Yoga and practice our meditation and our sadhana, as Swamiji said, to see every Kriya as an act of devotional self-offering, this can really give us the momentum, and it shows us the inward way to be able to give and serve others in an outward way, in the exact same spirit of devotional, religious self-offering, as Krishna says in the Gita. Now, Swamiji, he says even that in a talk or a letter he wrote to the monks many decades ago, in which he shared with Ananda Village, he talked about this intense yearning for God that Yogananda had when he was a young boy, even as a child. And it was said, and his friends and family said, that whenever the name of Divine Mother was even mentioned, Yogananda, young Mukunda, would start weeping tears of divine yearning. And Swamiji said that if he was talking to the monks, but then he shared this with Ananda Village, to everybody in Ananda Village. He was saying that if all of us, have that same intense type of yearning that young Mukunda had, he said we could do 10 times as much and be 100 times as effective, or something like that. The numbers are right. I may have them swapped around. But when we have that intense yearning for God, then that is the selfless religious giving that Krishna is talking about. And that generates and gets us really, it doesn't even generate, it just gets us in this flow of grace flowing through us, of divine love flowing through us. And so when we give in that way, then service and meditation both support each other. Now, this is also why it's not enough just to meditate. Over the years at Ananda Village, there have been people who just thought, okay, meditation is a way and that's all I'm going to do. And they would meditate for 8, 12, 14 hours a day. and just focus on their own sadhana. And without exception, those people left Ananda and left, as far as I know, an inner life and a spiritual life, except for one who understood that it was all about seva, and he's one of the great Ananda Seva people at Ananda Village, still serving all these years later very actively, even though he's in his 80s now. And so this is the balance. It's not even a balance, I would say. It's just a continuation and a giving expression of what we experience inwardly in devotional prayer, in devotional meditation. And in a way, Swamiji, when he talked about cooperating with grace, he said that it's not enough just to meditate or to go to church or to go to the temple and then come home and not be expressing it every moment in our daily lives. And he said that if we hold on to it, then we start to lose it and it starts to go away if we just keep it for ourselves in our own meditation and sadhana. And that's what happened to those people that I described. So grace, cooperating with grace, also means acting, actively serving others, actively sharing it with others. And if it's done in the right way, we find that not only does our meditation also stay strong and inspired, but we also find that we gain more of whatever we are giving. Now, this is something that Swamiji wrote about in how to give to others, but also just the fruits of giving in the right way. And he quoted from the Bible, where it says, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." And Swamiji writes about that. When we give from our hearts to others, the very gestures that often accompany that giving, and also our energy flow, are outward and self-expansive. Giving to others is blessed because it brings us more bliss. That is to say, it makes us happier, for it expands our self-identity to include in our own well-being the well-being of others. And I've seen this to be true even when I was facing karmic challenges in my life. I was dealing with a condition that just caused there was a lot of chronic pain, but also just a lot of dizziness and nausea that I was dealing with at the time. And it was, many times a month, a few times a week, and it was just randomly when it would come. And at the time I was serving in the Kriya Sangha at Ananda Village. And I was traveling a lot, and I had to schedule these tours and doing programs and being on the road. So I couldn't cancel something just because suddenly I was on my back with dizziness and nausea that was really, really intense. And I was doing this traveling, and over the long term as I was doing that, I dealt with that condition a lot when I was on the road, when I was in airplanes. And I found that by giving and serving in that way, even though I just felt like at times I didn't even have anything to give, I believe that serving in that way is actually what really turned the energy around and got me into the flow of divine grace. One time I laughed, I was giving a public talk about Kriya Yoga. This was in Arizona. And as I was preparing for the talk that day, this intense chronic nerve pain came on, and I was nausea and dizziness, and I went to give the talk, and I didn't know how I was going to give it. I felt incapable. I felt really weak and everything. But people were coming, and so I had no choice, and I prayed to Master, please give me the strength and allow me to do this. And as I was sitting there on a chair in front of the audience, it wasn't a huge audience, it was maybe 30 people or something who had come to hear me speak, I felt so dizzy and so nauseous. And literally the minute was coming to stand up and start speaking. I sincerely thought it was about a 50-50 chance that when I stood up, the nausea would come so strong that I would throw up when I stood up. The odds were about 50-50, I figured. But I just prayed to Master, and I thought, well, this will be a great introduction to Kriya Yoga if that's what I do when I stand up to these people. But I stood up and I called on Master, and I got over that nausea, and I was able to speak and give definitely a good enough talk. Maybe it wasn't a rousing, inspired talk, but I was able to serve, and I was able to give to others in spite of my own limitations. And I found it very healing when I was able to do that. And so this is the way out of our own karmas, is to give to others. Swamiji once, when he was asked the qualifications of an Ananda Acharya, what are the main qualifications for that? One of them, he said, was that when they are willing and are giving and serving to others, even though they are in the midst of their own karmic tests and challenges, which can be sometimes even extreme. And so this is the way to moksha, it really is. You know, we think that we are going to get out of our karma, our suffering, by fixing the karma and suffering. But we find that we get out by this selfless religious offering, because then we get into the flow of cooperating with divine grace. And this, I've just seen this again and again. I'll share another story, and I've shared this before. It's in the book on Kriya Yoga that Bhavani talked about. But I was once facing just another karmic test where I had very extreme pain in my side that was just going on and on for a few days, and finally got really, really severe. And it seemed like an emergency, so I was taken to the emergency room at the hospital near Ananda Village. And it was midnight on a Saturday night. And hospital emergency rooms on Saturday nights are very, very busy places because there are a lot of accidents. People have gotten drunk, people have fought each other, they've shot each other, all kinds of things. People have done a lot of drugs. It's just when everybody lets loose. So it's a wild time, and it was. I showed up, and there was a lot of people in that emergency room, and the doctor made me lie in a cot along with all these other people that he was seeing in that room. And as I was lying there, the pain was just more and more intense, and all I could do was just kind of curl up in a ball on this cot there. But I heard, as I was lying there, the doctor was treating another patient that had come, and it was a young boy, a teenager, who was in a coma, and he had had a drug overdose. And his girlfriend was standing next to him and next to the doctor. She was pleading with her boyfriend, please come back, please don't go. And the doctor was asking questions. And I realized that their suffering was far worse than mine, and both of them, the girl and her, just how distraught she was in his problem. So I began praying for them. And I asked Divine Mother, please give this boy another chance, please pull him back. And I prayed for the girl too, just for her heart to be healed and to be prepared to receive any possibility that she had to face. And as I was praying, all of a sudden this pain in my side just vanished, it went away, and I felt joy instead, and I felt freedom instead. And I never found out what happened to that couple there. As for myself, I still had to have a surgery to remove my gallbladder, but the pain went away and the suffering went away because I was thinking of giving to others and serving others and cooperating with this flow of divine grace, which really, when we cooperate with grace, it's a grace of divine love, divine healing, that really, it flows through us. It's not like it comes to us. It's not like we think of others and we serve, and so God gives us a certain amount of grace. No, it's more that when we act on behalf of others and giving in the right way, it has to be the right way. It has to be, as Krishna said, this devotional self-offering of giving God to people, to others, that when we do that in the right way, it's like when we start acting and we make the first action in that direction and in that way, what happens is that our self, it's like this channel opens up in our spine to the universe. And I don't want to make it overly technical in the details, because then we will start overthinking it. But we just open ourselves to working with grace. When we act selflessly and act for God with love, then we start being divine grace. We are divine grace in the sense that we become one with that divine grace, and it starts flowing through us because we are, in a way, becoming godlike in a little way, and for that moment that we are giving so selflessly. That is cooperating with grace. And you can see grace being next to us and side by side helping us. But in a deeper way, it is that grace is actually flowing through us. And we're actively cooperating with it by consciously sharing with someone. And it starts to generate this divine flow of grace that comes through us. Now, it doesn't matter what we have to give. It can be just the sincere wish to give to others is really all that we need. There's a beautiful story that Swami Kriyanandaji talks about in his autobiography, The New Path. And there was a man there, a brother monk, his name was Horace, Horace, and he was a brother monk of Swamiji when they were young men under Master. And Horace had a severe physical condition. And the way Swamiji writes about it, he was spastic, meaning he was just jerking around and couldn't control himself and his body and couldn't talk properly. And he was serving at the church, the temple, and he was taking around the collection basket for donations. And he was stammering and jerking around, and he was sort of, not the smooth, suave kind of person that we would usually choose to do a job like that. But people were deeply touched by his devotion and his willingness. And Master was really deeply touched by just his willingness to give and to serve. And he said about Horace, he said that Horace's devotion and love for God was so pleasing to God that he would be free, or he was almost free, liberated in this life, at that time when he was a very young man. And someone said, well, that must be a very simple type of devotion. And Master said, yes, that's exactly the type that God loves. Now, I heard later a story about this man, Horace, that I understood that he had Parkinson's disease condition. And it's an advanced, neurological disorder. And when he was older, he was still a disciple. He stayed as a disciple his whole life. But when he was older, he couldn't even walk or move at all. But he still wanted to serve. He still wanted to give. And so people would carry him to the lawn at Mount Washington where Yogananda was living. And this may even have been after Yogananda left the body, I believe it was. And they would put him on the lawn and he would lie down and he could move enough that he would pull out the weeds in the lawn. And then someone would move him and he would pull out more of the weeds. And that's the type of devotion that God loves. And that can be liberating. He was cooperating with grace. And maybe his physical condition wasn't healed. But there's no doubt that I believe that he became liberated in this life. And that inwardly he was not touched by that condition because he was not thinking of self anymore. He was thinking of this religious giving to others, this religious self-offering. That really is the liberating power of selfless service, of seva, of giving to others. So as we serve and as we give in the coming days, weeks, years at your center in Pune, whatever we do to our family, to our friends, do it in that right spirit, do it in that joy and in that inner freedom.